Hi, Nish. Welcome to the Intelligence AI Podcast. Great to have you on. We just wanted to start off by asking at Cortex. I know you're a solo founder managing both your engineering team and, building one of the most impressive vector database companies I know and out there. I wanted to hear a little bit more about how you've been kind of leveraging various AI tools, how you work on making your engineering team still stay super productive while you have to juggle all the other things out there as a founder.
Yeah, I think one of the most impressive things we've done so far in building up a team is everyone is managing themselves. I don't have to be hands-on with our engineers. They don't hear from me for hours because we're in different time zones, right? In general, because they're able to manage their own workflows, I think that's the biggest unlock and advantage that we have over some of our competitors. Actually, most of our competitors. Zero hand-holding and full ownership leads to a lot of really fast development and innovation.
Okay. And is that how much of that is that you've just managed to hire great engineering talent, and how much do you think kind of other tools that help with both writing code, maybe planning, reviewing, security, how do you think those things have enabled your team to be
I
more?
think, yeah, I think that's a very valid point. If we were to do it 5 years ago, I don't know if we would have been able to set the same dynamics or not. I did get lucky in terms of finding really, really, really good engineers, really solid people, smart, intelligent. But I think a lot of it is also dependent on as a function of us being able to leverage these AI tools, right? So reviews, of course, intelligence, and then writing code, cursor, planning, chat GPT, Claude. I think everyone has their own preferences, but it definitely has to be a function of us using the right tools at the right time with the right people.
Do you think that your team is kind of converged on a set process, and what parts of the engineering process still takes you guys the most time?
I don't think we have any process. I think everything is just working because it works. Everyone has their own preferences of using a certain set of AI tools, certain set of working. We have standard practices in terms of building features, in terms of writing code, but I genuinely don't think we have any set processes. The only thing where all of us converge is when we have to build something which is on a common like foundation. When you're building something which is very deeply technical, the entire company has to operate on the same principles. The entire team has to operate on the same set of opinions. You cannot bring your own opinions into and force them into something which has to operate on something foundational. So I guess where we converge is on this. We maintain this document. We maintain a set of principles that we need to follow when it comes to just working on a certain set of features. I think that's where we converge. But every other practice is that we have no practices. So I guess that is how we operate right now.
Is that set of features like code quality standards or design principles, or what exactly is that set of?
Yeah, I think it's, for example, if you were optimizing our latencies, right? We know that we're working in a certain set of regions, so you're not supposed to create another shard which is operating in a completely different region. Every shard has to be located next to some other shard which the customer has already requested, right? So these are some of the things, and it can be very convenient for you to spawn new instances and just make sure that your code keeps running, but that's not how we're going to scale to a very efficient company, right? So these are some of the things that we need to take care of when we're working and when we're operating at a billion vector scale or whatever with every company, right? Yeah, so that's what I meant by practices.
Okay, so these are more, okay, high level engineering best practices.
Yeah.
Awesome. You guys have been at the top of the engineering leaderboard for a few weeks now. So I'm just curious, like of your engineers, right? I think this guy Adil has been at the top. Anything you think that specific engineers on your team do that kind of help them most in terms of either, I think obviously engineering velocity is a combination of being able to write code faster, but also obviously knowing what to work on, making sure you're working on the right things. Is there any sort of like maybe proactive features or bugs or things that engineers do to kind of stand out amongst your team and in your perspective?
Yeah. Personal observation, I think I've seen three of my engineers be in the top 10. So I think it's
Nice.
just more than one guy. Anyways, I think our team, like, this is sort of on a tangent, but I think our team has been motivated since they've been started noticing themselves on a leaderboard, which is, I think you guys rolled out a leaderboard. I think they've been more motivated than ever to just make sure that their rankings stay aligned with their work. But the number one thing which I feel is helping us just innovate faster is a function of what we're actually, once again, it just goes back to what we're working on, right? There has to be working on something which is once again deeply technical, and there is a lot to be done in terms of what we are doing. We just need to make sure that At the application layer boundary, latencies are extremely low, responses are always high quality. Search is very subjective. So if you don't like search results for a particular query, then that's not on you, that's on us, right? And if our goal, our moat is to abstract away all complexity away from developers and make sure that search just clicks and works out of the box, then we need to go ahead and make a lot of optimizations, right? So being able to plan a few weeks in advance, a few months in advance, and figuring out that this is the path we need to operate on, this is what we need to execute on, being very surgical about it, is I think that has helped us a bunch in terms of just pushing a lot of new code and making sure that our velocity is just up to the mark.
Got it. So do you think your team spends more time upfront on kind of planning and deciding kind of what to work on and build, or more time after with kind of the reviews and making sure your code is ready to ship and fixing issues and bugs? What part of the engineering process do you think is still the most time consuming, both from you as like an engineering leader or manager, and for your individual engineers?
I think we follow the first path that you mentioned, right? So there will be weeks where none of my engineers will be on your leaderboard, right? Will just disappear. That happens because during those weeks, during those days, we write zero, or not zero, but like almost close to zero code. We ship zero features during those days. And then the idea is to just put all the pieces together high level and figure out, once we start executing on these things, that these things are actually aligned with what our customers want, what we think should exist in this world, and in general optimizations that should have existed already. So during those days, I think those are more critical. Like it's sort of like we can plan for as many days as we want, but I think time boxing it to a certain number of days and then figuring out the actual execution plan and then executing on it has worked out much better than anything for us. Previously, we used to plan a sprint, execute on it, plan, execute. I feel like that workflow works, and I've seen companies do that, but for us, for some reason, it did not work out. So what we do is we plan for as many days as we want. Of course, there's like time boxing and everything involved, right? But we take a lot of time planning and thinking through our architecture, thinking through best practices, and then we start executing. But that's when we do start executing, I feel like we're pushing the limits of what is possible with our code base, what is possible with our technology.
Got it, got it. And how much do you use leverage kind of AI to help you in the planning phase? Because I think that is one thing that we've also noticed is like we used to write very elaborate design docs up front, and then I think as engineers realize that they can just build things without having to sit there and plan things up front. I've seen this across a lot of engineering teams actually, is that like that practice kind of gives way to build first and think later. How do you think that holds for your team? It seems like you guys don't do that. And is there kind of a way that you use some of these tools in that planning process as well? And what are kind of the gaps that you think it can still help more with?
I think we do to some extent, or to a very large extent, we do use some of these AI tools. The time to acquire knowledge, it operates at this very interesting boundary of things which we think we know, but we don't know. And then there's this whole world of things we don't even know, what we don't know about. I feel like the AI leverage is operating at this very interesting boundary where we can acquire new knowledge really fast. How do you route network through a private network, right? How do you route requests through a private network faster in a more efficient manner? How do you manage your queues better? All of those things are things we could have acquired in terms of like we could have absorbed that knowledge soon, I mean, by ourselves. But because we now use a lot of these AI tools in the planning phase, also, we just know that, okay, there's this new thing that we could do, right? There's this new technique we had never even thought about. It's like reading hundreds of Google search results in a matter of minutes because now this new model just knows how to do this thing, right? So during our planning phase, I think it's a 50-50 split. We will acquire all the knowledge we can, and then we'll try to converge it, then we'll try to make sense of it, we'll try to distill it, and then figure out what's the best path moving forward. One thing that we've done is, and this is a very interesting observation, earlier we used to just have one decision to execute on, right? But since we've started leveraging these tools and we've started, it acts like a funnel. We have so much knowledge to distill from, and then we come to this final decision. But now we've started challenging ourselves by we use so much AI in terms of rectifying the final decision that we'll challenge our own hypothesis. We'll come up with 10 different hypotheses. We'll figure out some AI tool to just challenge our own hypothesis. And just when you go through that continuous loop, continuous iterations of just making sure that your own hypothesis is correct, 10 new hypotheses come up, right? And then you don't have to stick to one. You can pick up the eighth one, you can pick up the second one, and whichever one you pick, you know you're picking it out of like multiple options, and then it's even more higher quality decision making compared to just sticking to one thing. So that was an interesting observation of how we started doing things recently.
Got it. And then at the culmination of this planning, is it like a design doc of some form? Is it just tickets? Is it just like group conversations? Like how do you?
It's Yeah, it's handwritten notes and like a flow chart, which is messy to look at.
Cool. So there's still some non-AI in this.
There is a lot of non-AI in this.
Okay. Very cool. Anything specifically your team does at any point of the engineering process that you think makes them stand out and makes them, you know,
I mean, top of my head, I think just challenging the decisions that we come up with now inherently is a very standout quality of our team. Earlier, if we would have spent 2 days figuring out how to do something, we would have finally, there's a very high probability we would have stuck to that decision, right? But even though now we could take 2 days, 4 days, maybe a week to come to a decision, we would still challenge that decision and we would ask a bunch of agents to figure out loopholes in that approach. We would use agents to figure out alternative approaches. We would use agents to figure out more optimized approaches. I think that is one thing that has been standing out recently. And it wasn't a standard practice that I set personally. It was just someone did it once and we were surprised by the results. And now everyone does it. I think that's a really good standout feature.
got it. Very cool. And then one other question, right? Obviously, you guys ship very quickly, you're adding new features, all of that, but you also vector databases is like a very critical part of large engineering teams' infrastructure. So how have you kind of managed the trade-off between and vector databases, it's probably not something you can easily like unit test, right? So how are you maintaining high code quality while kind of not being the one micromanaging everyone's output and all of that? What do you kind of what have you learned in that? Is that something you've always kind of worked on? Is this something you've been improving over time?
Yeah. First of all, I mean, thanks to you that we have like a bunch of things which stop us from pushing bugs to production. Yeah, I think that has been really helpful being able to. I mean, humans still make errors, right? There's no doubt about it. So earlier when we were pushing code to production, we did end up sending a lot of things that could have been optimized or just they could have been better in general, right? So yeah, shout out to you and your team for helping us reduce those things. That being said, we have a very certain set of tests that your code needs to pass before it can be even pushed to production, right? We have this elaborate 11-step testing thing that we over time built, and we've realized that
Integration test, okay. Do you want to that's
no, these are actually
yeah, good.
I would love to have unit tests, but we don't. I mean, some of them are unit tests, but it's mostly a bunch of manual checks that need to happen by some other person on our team, right? So if you push a piece of code, then your coworker, some other engineer needs to manually verify that the thing is because, like I said, search is subjective. You could tweak a weight over here, you could tweak a setting over there, and then search results end up getting messed up for every single person who's using our product. So there's a lot of evals involved in terms of even before pushing anything to production, and then we have this very elaborate checklist that it needs to go through. So I think that is one standard practice that we've set over time after gaining some insights on how we operate, how things work when we push anything to production.
Got it. Cool, very cool. The last thing, I know you're very particular about like code best practices and all of that. I don't know. I've seen your code and you seem to nitpick a lot. How have you kind of maintained those standards across your team with time? Do you find that AI and so forth is able to maintain your kind of code quality standards and all of that? And how have you kind of made that work out?
I think everyone on our team has OCD with respect to like code quality. We need to make sure that we push really performant code, right? It's unlike other SaaS applications out there. If you see an increase in latency, so if we're operating at 200 milliseconds of latencies, our APIs have to respond in under 200 milliseconds, right? Even a slightly inefficient piece of code could bump up the latencies by 100 milliseconds, right? If we don't For example, this is a basic practice, so there's no harm in sharing this. If you don't cache API keys on behalf of our users, then we'll have to re-authenticate the entire flow. That ends up adding 50 milliseconds. And we've been working tirelessly to make sure that we can shave off 10 seconds, 30 milliseconds. These numbers sound very small, like 10 milliseconds. It's faster than what most humans can blink, right? But when it starts adding up, it adds up. 10 milliseconds, 30 milliseconds over time, it reduce, and then you reduce it to 100 milliseconds, you reduce it to 50 milliseconds. I think that is what we are very conscious about, that every piece of code that needs to go out there is like it's in its best form, it's in its most efficient form. There's a lot of work to still do, but over time I think we built this muscle of making sure that we always did our best work, we always pushed the best piece of code we could. And yeah, I think I initially set these standards, but now I think the team bears the flag, and they're just, all of us have built this muscle memory of making sure that we follow these things on production.
Awesome. One last thing that I wanted to ask is if you could, I think two things, right? If you could say one thing that your team does amazing at that you would like to shout out, and one thing that you wish you could still get better at, what would those be?
We'll get back to that. Okay. One thing that I think I'm really proud of my team, and I think I might sound like a broken record, but being able to challenge their own hypothesis day in and day out is extremely commendable. I am impressed by the fact that it takes a lot of conviction to come to one decision, and if you're sure that this is the best way moving forward, still people would poke holes in it, and then AI pokes holes in it, and then you know that, "Oh, wait, this isn't the best approach, right? I've been researching into this," and it's commendable that you can move beyond, you're not attached to this idea that you proposed, right? So that's one thing that I would, yeah, that's one thing that they deserve a massive shout out for. One thing that we could improve on, huh? That's interesting. Maybe that's a hard one. Okay. I think one thing that I guess every team needs to improve on in general is figuring out how to communicate technical ideas in as little time as possible. Sometimes I think context transfer can take so long because you've been deeply involved in this one segment. You've been figuring out how to optimize indices, someone else is figuring out how to optimize latencies, but you still sometimes need like a bouncing board for ideas, right? So I feel like most or almost every good engineer needs to have this skill where they're able to communicate technical ideas extremely quickly with a lot of brevity when they're talking to their coworkers. And I think this is something we could definitely for sure work on. And once we achieve that state where all of my team members are able to understand each other in as little words as possible, I think we'll be much more we'll be like extremely efficient. So yeah, I look forward to that day.
Well, one last thing. I know you guys also have recently tried out like the code security analysis.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on improving, on generally maintaining secure code, and how like, I don't know. I think that's one thing that a lot of engineering teams overlook is you make sure your code works well. Obviously, in your situation, also optimize latencies a lot. Do you think security is one thing that you think of top of mind, or is that something that you'd be happy to kind of delegate more to an AI system to go in and check and fix for you?
Yeah. No, 100%. I think if someone can take care of security for us, we'd be more than happy to do it, right? I can speak about our application. I can speak about how things work. So whenever you or anyone ends up using Cortex, then you need to take care of role-based access controls. You need to take care of partitioning. You need to take care of just the clusters that are being maintained are just properly secured. I feel, yeah, I kind of agree to that statement. A lot of companies that I've seen, or a lot of our customers actually, they've done some amazing things, but security is not always on the top of their minds unless you're obviously like a cyber security company, right? If someone can actually delegate a lot of our security work and just tell us what to do instead of us hiring engineers specifically dedicated to this, because it's not the priority for us right now, right? For us it is, but for a lot of other companies it's not, because it's just applications. I think that would be a huge win for most applications. You need to take care of so many things when it comes to security. When even if you want to get compliant, SOC 2, ISO, GDPR, HIPAA, you need to take care of security, right? And without security, you're not getting these certifications. Without these certifications, you're not getting customers. So if you can do it, I think that's the best win for any company out there.
Perfect. Well, Intelligence did recently roll it out, so happy to have
Amazing.
you get it
Yeah.
right out.
I mean, yeah, we're trying it out and I love it so far.
Sounds good. Cool. It was great having you on, and yeah, everyone shout out to Nishkarsh and try out Cortex.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.